Today I'm here with Helena, and we are going to talk about her college hacked journey. To start it off, what kind of student were you in high school?
I would say I was a good student. I did well in school. I didn't really have to work incredibly hard to get good grades. So, in general, school was easy for me. The thing that kind of set me apart was leading into college, I just wasn't quite ready. There was just some external life circumstances that didn't give me the confidence that I needed to emotionally commit to the enduring process that it required for me to go to college.
That makes a lot of sense. And so then after you didn't go to college, what did you do instead?
Well, I ended up going to trade school. So I knew I wanted to do something just to help people feel good about themselves. And I ended up in the cosmetology industry and focused on being an underpaid therapist in that respect as a hairdresser. And I absolutely loved it for a while. But then after a bit of time, it became incredibly monotonous, and just the lack of intellectual challenge became an issue. I wasn't being challenged. It's like once you know a craft, it just becomes second nature. I started to not have the fulfillment I desired in a career after a while.
This is such a good point, because I think a lot of people feel like that, where they're in a career that maybe it pays the bills and it's comfortable and they're even good at it, but they're languishing. They're not necessarily having a good time with it. It's not helping them grow. They don't feel like they're necessarily helping other people in the way that they want to be, or whatever that values goal is. So, okay, so then you were brave enough to do something about it. What did that look like?
Well, I have to admit, this has actually been years in the making, because I started my career as a hairdresser back when I was 19 is when I finished school, and started my business really shortly thereafter. And I've toyed with the idea of going back to school for years, and actually one time took a class at my local university. It's just that at the time, the school counselor made the comment that everything that I had interest in didn't require a degree. And so it was almost like, all right, so I guess I'll just not go to college again. And then, we're talking 3 kids later, and I'm literally about to turn 44 this week. And just this idea of going to school for 4 years was just daunting. And my siblings for years have watched me throw thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars at certifications and programs and accreditations. And it's been obvious to all of them that I'm an advocate for learning, and like that I'm this huge lover of education. I was sitting around with my sisters in my sister's kitchen, and she said, "Girl, you put all this money and all this time and effort into all this education and training." She goes, "Why don't you just go to school?"
You gotta love those siblings. They'll call you out for sure.
Yeah. And I remember being like, yeah, that would probably make more sense to actually be able to have a degree instead of a certification. One issue that just kept popping up over and over again, that I was finding myself in these limited roles or working for companies that really lacked the professionalism or the structure because of that lack of degree. That's when I really pulled the trigger and started looking around.
Nice. Okay, so you had this progression from not necessarily really thinking about it a ton because you were happy with cosmetology to, okay, I'm not that satisfied. And then from there, sort of this slow progression of thinking, I'm missing the degree and I'm having to work for these people that I don't like working for because they're not great at leadership. I could probably do a better job. Let me close the gap and get the degree.
Yeah. And then I just happened to be on YouTube because I have a slight addiction to YouTube. And of course, I guess maybe it's a blessing, not a blessing, that your phone listens to you. My phone knew I was looking at going to college, and really, thank God I found your channel. I found some others, but your channel just stuck out, and I just kept watching. I remember one night just watching video after video after video, and I just knew that I needed to reach out to you guys to see what you guys could do to help me hack this college thing.
Yay, that's so exciting. I'm glad that you trusted us, because we were strangers on the internet and you took a leap of faith and actually decided to sign up. So we met in September, I think like September 24th of 2024. Yep. And so after we met the first time, what were kind of your thoughts after that meeting?
I was just really excited to get going. I looked at the recommendation that you gave me, which was phenomenal. And I think that's the biggest thing, that it's really reassuring for people, especially in the unknown landscape, is, I was able to walk away from that appointment with a very clear and concise plan. And then what I did is, based on the information you'd given me, then I just kind of took that and compared it to my own life calendar and figured out how I would maybe need to tweak it, or just know how much I could do. it was really important to me to try to shorten the time span. I think when you and I sat down, the projected time would be roughly a year for me to finish an entire, 120 credit hours. I was on my laptop doing school every free moment of the day. So my weekends were on the laptop.
Wow. And this wasn't the only thing you were doing either. You've got children and, you've got all kinds of things you're balancing in your life.
I will say that as a parent, especially for all of you parents out there, and for sure single parents, I'm a single mom. I don't have the luxury of just pawning my kids off when it's inconvenient for me. But what I can say that is actually of a huge benefit is any parent knows this, but your passion and drive for doing stuff for your children is so tremendous, and you're willing to go through such great lengths and sacrifice for them. I mean, that was my burning desire, right? I mean, having a stable career isn't just for me, it's for them. It was also really exciting because for my kids, I love role modeling anything. I'm really passionate about leadership. I have been my entire life, and with that, or throughout their upbringing, I've always talked about leadership and leading by example. And so it really was invigorating and exciting for them to see me role model the things I've talked to them about. And they really, really loved the idea of their older mom going to college like years later. They just thought I was a pretty cool badass, to be honest. So it was really motivating. I'm not going to say it was easy. That's a lie. I want to be really transparent. I wasn't on my mom A game, that's for sure. But it was really cool though, because they were so supportive. I never got any grief from them about any of it. I talked to them about it before I started, and we were all on the same page. It was a short-term sacrifice for greater gains in the end.
This is such a good point, and I'm really glad that you brought this up, because I think one of the missing pieces for a lot of people when they think about going back to school is they think, my family, what will they do without me? Or I can't step back from these responsibilities that I have. And what we see routinely over and over is that if you get the family on board, if you sit everybody down and this is a temporary sacrifice, but it's going to be worth it at the end of everything. Here's what life is going to look like for a little while. And it might be a little tough, but I'm here for you. I'm not, gone. I'm just focused on a task, just like someday you're going to be focused on a task, or, kind of bringing them into it. And it sounds like you did that in a really wonderful way where they fully understood, okay, mom is a badass.
And let's face it, not everyone has to do what I did, right? It was important to me to finish up as soon as possible, but had I wanted to take my time and not put myself through that type of undue stress, I could have very easily made it take 1 year or 2 years. I mean, to be able to finish a 4-year degree in 2 years is super cool. No one has to compare their journey to me.
Okay, awesome. So your total time was about 4 months, and what was your total cost?
Yeah. If I recall, when I did figure it out, I want to say it's roughly $500.
Total for everything?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Hang on. Maybe it was 700. I'm trying to think. 400 with Sophia. And then I did 1 month of study.com. But to be able to do the 1 month of study.com, I know that you have to pay extra for an additional test.
Yes, and it's $235.
So I paid 2 additional tests because I think you only get 2 tests for that. And then I was fortunate, but I was able to qualify for grants. So college itself didn't cost me a dime.
Oh, good. You got Pell Grant.
Yeah. So I got full Pell Grant for college. And so the only thing I paid for was Sophia and study.com.
So basically $775 for the hacking. And then you got everything at UMPI paid for. How many terms did you do there?
Only 2.
Wow, that is so awesome. So you did like 5 and 5 classes?
Yes. I think the first semester while I was still working full time was 6 classes, which was insane.
That's amazing. So tell us more about that. How big was the jump between the hacking and the UMPI classes?
I think one of the coolest things about UMPI, and this is great for anyone to hear, is when you've missed the college boat, you get this idea. It's so crazy. And I still think about this now. Like I've got a kid getting ready, or actually he's been taking college classes, but he's a senior in high school now. But there's this this idea that college is, you've built it up to be this really, really tough thing. It's just not right. It's actually just not true at all. There was definitely some tougher classes, but the reality is especially at my age, by the time you're in your 40s or even your 30s, so much of it was common sense. Yeah, there was some terminology that was new to me, but conceptually, it wasn't rocket science. If you're thinking that going back to school is going to be impossible because you suck at a certain subject, I just want to say it's not true. It is so much more doable than what anyone can imagine.
That's a lot of wisdom right there. And for those who don't know, if you do, for example, your math or your English, those are usually the two things that really make people nervous when they're going back to school. They either have one of those is a nemesis. If you do it on Sophia, which is pretty common when we build plans, they offer 10 free hours of tutoring for the math classes that they offer in the English classes. So there's a lot built in, I think, that people don't know about. What are some other tips that you would give people who might be considering going to UMPI?
Well, the biggest thing I want to just say is I did each one class at a time. Initially, I thought what I would do is dabble between a couple of classes. When you start, you have to apply for 2 classes. But I found I was most efficient if I just completed one class. And then the second I submitted my draft, I immediately went to working on the second class. That way to save time. So that was really, really important. I didn't sit and linger because some of the professors may get back with you in 24 hours. But some of them, may take several days before they can go back with their recommendations. And then something else that's really important to know is as you're going, I would also immediately, upon submitting my draft, submit the request to open up a new class.
Good job. That's super. Sometimes people linger, like you said, and they don't realize that you can put in that request or that you need to put in that request to get added to another course. I believe they just changed some policies and now you can be in 4 classes at the same time. But I like what you said about the single class, and then that kind of takes care of the time complexity, because if you submit a final and you're just a final submission for the draft and you're waiting for that to come back and you start your other class, now you're not necessarily worried if it takes a few days for them to get back to you because you're busy with the next class. So you've bought yourself more time where you're not having to sit on your hands and you can still move forward. So that was a good strategy.
Well, and it's something great to know that I didn't realize till the end also is Sophia works the same way. Sophia says that you can only have 2 active classes going at the same time. But towards the end, I would have 2 different classes that I was in waiting for grades. And all I had to do was email them and say, hey, I've submitted these 2, please open up. At one point in time, I think I had 4 or 5 active classes going with Sophia. And each time they were incredibly easy to get along with. And all they had to do was just validate that I had in fact submitted my finals in each of those classes, and they just immediately opened up another course for me. So whether it's UMPI or Sophia, they both were really, really great at opening up whatever you needed so you can keep working. It's like everyone knows what you're doing. Everyone knows you're just trying to get done as quickly and efficiently as possible. And it seems like they're both very accommodating to help you accomplish that.
I love it. That's so awesome. Wow. That's so many classes at the same time on Sophia. But something that strikes me about your story is the whole way through whatever chapter you were in, you were very much not too aggressive and not too reserved, just the perfect balance of, hey, I'm doing something here. Can you open another class for me? Hey, advisor, can you put another class on my plate at UMPI? You were just on it that whole time, making sure that you weren't just sitting there thinking, well, I guess they'll email me when they're ready, which happens a lot. I think sometimes people think, oh, it's their job, they'll be on top of it, but you really kept the train driving forward.
Yeah, I would say I lived my life that way, but I don't think you can get to my age and assume that everyone's always on top of their stuff. I think one of the biggest gifts, and it's actually a life lesson I've always tried to instill this in other people, is you've got to be proactive. People make mistakes. And so if you're waiting and assuming, there's just been way too many times in my life where that's bit me in the butt. So, if I was delayed, it was going to be because of something I did, not because I was waiting on someone else.
Ooh, I like that. That's a great philosophy. Okay, so you knocked out the bachelor's degree super fast, just like you wanted wanted to. What are your thoughts about the future? Where are you going from here?
That has changed so much in the last 30 days. I know for sure I'm taking the rest of the semester off. I'm excited about my graduation and I'm taking the summer off. And by the way, I'm actually in the running for speaking at the commencement.
Stop it. That's amazing. That would be such a good choice.
I don't know. I'm toying around with going back and getting either my master's in business or my master's in psychology. I'm very, very open to whatever comes along. I want to do some stuff, just pro bono, some mental health stuff for people. And then for work, I'm doing a lot of freelance in business marketing stuff.
That sounds like a great plan. You're giving yourself time to celebrate what you've done and kind of unwind and let life back in now that your, focus has broadened once again after school is over. So yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else that you might want to tell the channel? You were once just a channel viewer thinking, oh, maybe this is for me, maybe it's not for me. What would you tell those people?
I just want to say, do it. Like I said from the very beginning, I have regretted not going to a four-year university my entire adult life. And it was just so refreshing to recognize that it was still something so incredibly doable. If you're like me and you're several kids later in life, I just want to say it's really, really, really so much easier than what you could possibly imagine. And you just got to remind yourself that it's short term.
There has been so many inspiring things that you have said today, and I think have appealed to a lot of different groups of people who think the way that you thought previously, which is, I can't take 4 years or go to physical classes, and maybe you didn't know there was other options. So I'm really excited for people to see themselves in your story. Thank you so much for your time. And thanks for trusting us, letting us be a small part of your story. I really enjoyed working with you.
And thank you so much.